welcome back to Finally Game Music. This is episode 139, and this time we're going to talk about Claymation games. And, well, more specifically, since this is a video game music podcast, we're going to talk about the music for them. I've picked out 2 tracks, and we have 2 requested tracks for this week, so a total of 4 songs will be played for this episode. So, when it comes to Claymation, what does that mean? Well, when it comes to Claymation games, it is games that is surrounding some sort of clay factor. So, maybe the characters could be out of clay when playing, and then they did some stop motion to it and then implemented it as sprites within games. Or it could be the world being constructed by clay, for example. And we will go through a couple of different type of games as well, also a sequel as well. It was super interesting to see a sequel get requested. Well, first game gets requested and then the sequel gets requested. But more on that we're going to dig in as we move along within this episode. But for starters, we're going to start with a game I do believe many people might know of. I have played a song from this game before, but this was when I had this podcast in Swedish, so maybe you international listeners might not know of the song specifically that was played before, so to speak. But yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about the game The Neverhood. So, I do wonder if you recognize the name at all. Maybe you will recognize the music maybe even more, because it has a quite unique kind of touch to it. But the first song here is also a requested one, so I'm going to read the comment that came along with it. And this one is a request by Johannes. So, song request for the Claymation episode. Well, there are so many cool and unique songs in the Neverhood soundtrack, so it is almost hard to make a choice. Clayman's theme, The Weasel Chase, Joe's Fralinciano, and Cough Drops are all favorites, but in the end, I have to go with The Battle of Robot Bill. It is a strong piece that plays during a cutscene in the game showing the fate of one of your companions in Neverhood. Looking forward for the next episode, and take care. So we're going to listen to The Neverhood and the song that's opening up this week's episode, The Battle of the Robot Bill. The Battle of Robot Bill from the game The Neverhood. So the soundtrack here was composed by the American singer-songwriter, producer and author Terry Scott Taylor. The game, it was developed by the American company called at this point The Neverhood Inc. The game itself, it was initially released in the US and Europe back in 1996 and exclusively basically on PC, but was also then ported to a Japanese release for PlayStation back in 1998. And this one is really, really interesting just when you're kind of looking at it, because, well, the soundtrack itself is so freaking unique. The Neverhood is a full Claymation game, so everything within this game is made of out of clay. I almost said Claymation again. But yeah, within this game everything is made of clay, so you're moving around in more like a movie, so to speak, and you go from sometimes platforming, where you get a 2D view of the characters running around, jumping over stuff and so on, but you also can go into like of a hub world, and there you move around in first person. All the different environments and everything is made of clay as well, as much as the characters themselves within this game as well, monsters and characters. And in this game you play the character Clayman, and you're basically trying to save the world, the Neverhood, because it's gone a little bit of awry when it comes to what's happening, what's going on, because you're basically just waking up and you don't really know anything about the world. You're, so to speak, a newborn coming into the world, and you don't know anything. But over time you will get these bits and pieces all the time, which kind of just develops the story and creates what needs to be done. And you will get help from certain characters you come to meet during the game itself. I've never completed this game myself. I borrowed this when I was a little bit younger, and I had a great time with it, even though I didn't understand much. There's not much either text or talk within this game, but the Neverhood is a hard point-and-click game. So you have different kinds of puzzles you need to solve, you need certain items for certain placements, and so on to get forward within the story and within this game. But what I really like about this game is when you find an item, there's no inventory screen whatsoever. So you're basically picking up stuff, and your Clayman guy is just opening stuff up like a compartment on his stomach, and he just shoves that item in. And if you find the different places where you need to use these specific items, then it will just pick them out. So you don't. So it's not like a hardcore point and click like. For example, the Curse of Monkey Island, where you need to like point and click for everything. You need to use it, and you were supposed to combine stuff and such. You don't have that within Neverhood, so that's the more easier part. But I do remember I had a really hard time with this game when I tried it when I was younger. But one thing that really sticks out, first of all, it is the claymation. It feels really unique. When I started playing this game when I was young, I've never seen something like it at that point. Then I got into other games like Clay Fighters and stuff like that on the Super Nintendo, but Neverhood was something that felt super unique at this point. The other part is the soundtrack for this one. First of all, we don't have a composer here that's been working in the more... as a more classical kind of game music from time when you had Super Nintendo and stuff like that. When it comes to Terry, he's more classical. He's a singer-songwriter and working with Christian rock, and he's kind of ahead of that time for himself as well. So he's not used to making music for games, as the Neverhood was one of his first one. So looking at Terry and what he had worked on, so the Neverhood was actually his first soundtrack that he did, and also did multiple other works for the studio, the Neverhood Inc., and also for the upcoming Neverhood sequels as well. So the sequel that came along for the Neverhood is called Skull Monkeys, which was released for PlayStation exclusively, that were released 2 years after the Neverhood. And after that one, he worked on Boombots from 1999, The Impossible Quiz 2007, and UFO's Love Cows 2014. And lastly, he also worked on the spiritual successor of the Neverhood series, and somewhat the return of Claymation. Claymation is a really hard kind of medium to kind of work with, especially when it comes to cash flow within companies. They are unique, yes, but they're really costly when it comes down to this, making all the different figurines in Claymation and so on. But now I'm going off track here. So the return of Claymation here, it was Amicorg. That game was released back in 2015 after a successful Kickstarter campaign. And looking back at these differences, I actually looked through the behind the scenes for the Neverhood and also for Army Krog. And it's really interesting because in the spiritual successor of the game, they actually used a new type of clay. So instead of having to remodel the clay main character all the time, the Army Corps character was more like an action figure, even though he was made fully in just clay. But he was made with a special clay where you can basically move him around pretty fluently, so you didn't have to harden him up or anything like that. Because sometimes you need to heat clay up in order to make it stable. But when they worked on the Neverhood, they basically just had more soft clay. It was still a special clay there as well, but they had more of a soft clay, so they didn't harden all the characters all the time, so they could easily remodel them from scratch from there, but they kind of utilized all the time new different kind of clay functions and pre-done clay stuff, which was interesting. It was super interesting looking at the behind the scenes, so I highly recommend people to check these through to see how a video game comes about when you're working with clay as your main ingredient before the game, instead of working with a digital medium to get characters on screen. Super interesting. So the game we're going to continue with from the Neverhood. I've been talking a little bit here about the behind the scenes of the Neverhood and how they utilized different clay variations and ingredients for the game. We're going to talk about another game where they used clay as one of the ingredients of making this pretty unique game. So we're going to listen to Dream Ending from the game The Dream Machine. Dream Ending from the game The Dream Machine, and the soundtrack for this game was composed not by one but 4 different composers. We have Alejandro Speranza from Argentina, the American Jonathan Ademrich, and the 2 Swedes Douglas Holmqvist and Jan Cardell. And the game, it was developed by the Swedish studio Cockroach Inc. or The Sleeping Machine AB. The game, it had its initial release back in 2010 with its first chapter, and the game has only been released for PC and Mac. And during 7 years in production, so to speak, the studio have worked on a total of 6 different chapters, and they're ending up with releasing the full game and with all those chapters back in 2017. This game is also a game, there's not that many different people have worked on this game. All the different scenes you can move around in. This is a point and click game, so it's like you're looking into like a dollhouse kind of thing. You can see the whole scenario you're trying to experience mostly within this game. I haven't played this one myself, but I have a little bit of a check on this game because it has looked like a really nice game, even though I haven't played it myself yet. I'm not a super fan of point and click, But just looking at this one, even though it kind of looks a bit horrifying at the same time, I really like the craftsmanship they've put into this game. So the main characters for this game are made with with clay. So there you have the claymation part of it, but they also use clay for some of the parts they've built up the different scenes with. So the scenes are made of either clay or cardboard and stuff like that. And it's super interesting just to see how they handicraft the whole experience, and then they just took pictures of the characters, edited the scenes into the game, and then edited with the sprites and everything for the characters. So it's super sweet to actually see this part come to life. And the game has been getting a couple of awards, I think. I'm pretty sure they have at least 1 or 2. Pretty sure about that one. And it also has been a talk in Sweden about this game as well. They did get like a extra kind of fund for this project, which was super interesting as well. But looking at the different composers here, so we're starting out with Alejandro, and he has only composed video game music on this title, and is working mainly with what I understand more commercialized music in his studio back in LA, where he lives now. Looking at the second composer, the American Jonathan, he started out with the Chapter 1 of the Dream Machine, but have during the years worked on 4 other games, where he worked on the full soundtrack for Throne of Olympus and Avalon Legends Solitaire back in 2011. He did 1 song for the ship simulator Maritime Search and Rescue back in 2014, and the last other game other than the Dream Machine was Dungeon Punks that released back in 2016, and the last credit was for the last chapter of the Dream Machine back in 2017. And yeah, we have talked about and to Douglas actually within this podcast before, but it was during the English time of the podcast as well, so it might be hard for international listeners to listen to Douglas and me talking about the music that he did for Pinout. But looking at Douglas' credit list here, we can see that Dream Machine was also one of the games he started out with, but he have also worked on other games in parallel to working with the Dream Machine project. He also did music for the Swedish company Mediocre AB, and there he worked on the first game called Granny Smith from 2012, Smash Hit back in 2014, Does Not Commute in 2015, and then the pinball game where I did in the interview with Douglas for, specifically Pinout, that released back in 2016. And after working on Pinout, he worked as a composer for the game Midwinter. And the last credited work that he has right now on his list is Knife Sisters, that released back in 2019, which is also a small little project, which is super interesting as well. And looking at the last composer here, Jan, he's just like Alejandro and have only worked on the Dream Machine project and all the different chapters there. So that was the little thing and the little addition to the Dream Machine. It's kind of interesting when they combine multiple type of materials. For Dream Machine, they had both clay and both cardboard boxes and stuff like that. Maybe they had some other materials as well. I'm a little bit unsure. Looking at the scenarios and what I've seen from print screens and such, there's a lot of cardboard and clay. And looking at the game before, Neverhood was only made of clay, or most likely made of clay. Could have been like a small structure within them to keep the clay on place. So we're heading back into the same of the Neverhood, because we're going and heading over to the sequel, the direct sequel of the Neverhood. And yeah, this is also a requested song, this time by Daniel Onemark. And yeah, let's read his comment here. I'll be thoroughly disappointed with you if you do not include the bonus rune theme from Skull Monkeys in the next episode. I think that's the only Claymation game I've played myself. Also, it is also a kick-ass menu theme. Apart from that, I know it is a prequel of the Neverhood, and it is a spiritual sequel to Army Korg, which was kickstarted. Does Clay Fighter count? Claymation is cool as balls, but it's way too rare. How about game adaptation of the Swiss Claymation cartoon Pingu? But yeah, that was his comment on that. So let's actually listen to the bonus room theme from Skull Monkeys.
Bonus room, 'cause I know you've had it tough. And here's a little bonus tune about collecting real cool stuff. Yes, here's a little bonus room where you can play. Don't be frightened, don't run away. You can linger, 'cause I'm your video friend. Think of me as a father figure with a hand to lend. Here's a little bonus room where you don't have to worry. Take your sweet time, you need not hurry. Oh, you're looking incredible, you're the bomb. And me, I'm kinda like your dad, and a little like your mom. There are no monsters here, hey wait, look over there. I was just kidding, don't be scared. And when you turn this game off in the real world once again, you won't have to play make-believe or try to pretend.
And that was the little bonus room from the game Skull Monkeys, requested by Daniel. So thank you so much. And also a big thank you for requesting the Neverhood song, Johannes, as well. Thank you so much. It's always fun when you guys are coming in and requesting songs as well. Usually, I myself have a good kind of feeling over the Neverhood, as I have been playing it before. But Skull Monkeys is actually new to me. I actually didn't know. I know it was a Claymation game because I have heard about the game, but I actually did not know that it actually was a sequel to the Neverhood. And when it comes to the music here, it is by the same. It is Terry again working, and it also is the same company, the Neverhood Inc. But the game was also, as I said before during the information of the Neverhood, was an exclusively released game on PlayStation back in 1998. So I can't really add much more to this game, more than the other things I know, that Skull Monkeys is not a point and click. It also is fully made with Claymation, but the unique part is here is actually it is turning into an action platforming game instead of having a point and click type of adventure here. There are still some puzzles that you need to do, but overall it seems to be like a pretty okay game, most likely because the music is amazing, just like you heard with this song, for example. It is unique when it comes to both Neverhood and Skull Monkeys. It is amazing, pretty unique kind of soundtrack, and that's kind of why I like it so much, because it's unique in so many ways. Because, well, looking at Neverhood, it looks like but it sounds like a drunk man going through and singing everything, while Skull Monkeys kind of have that kind of tune, but still thrives into the core, but having a little more seriousness into it. But it's still a pretty humorous game. But from what I noticed from people reviewing Skull Monkeys, it seems to be a pretty okay game, but it is really hard. Looking at the content of it, I wouldn't say it's not much more harder than it could be playing Donkey Kong Country, for example. Though something similar to both games is that if you take a hit, you're dead, so you need to start over. And instead of being able to have an extra monkey with you, you can only take one hit in Skull Monkeys. I'm just sorry. So you're on a thin line when it comes to that game, but you have unlimited amounts of continues, so that's apparently no worries. But apparently it's also a little bit too long for its best as well. Usually, what I'm starting to notice with a couple of games, especially in modern times now, it's games are getting way too long, especially when looking at the statistics on how many people are actually completing the games. And yeah, it's horrible. Let's just leave it at that. But yeah, so Skullmonkeys has still that kind of core of claymation. Looking at the company of the Neverhood, they also did the Boom Bots right after. But I think they only did like one more game after that, and then they actually stopped that company. They closed it down to kind of revitalize it with another and new name back in 2009. And from there they started working on multiple other titles, but also trying to go in and create more claymation stuff, such as Army Korg, for example. But yeah, thank you so much, guys, for suggesting songs for this one. And the last song we're going to listen to today is from my favorite console, the Super Nintendo. And we're going to listen to Level 3 theme from the game I do not own yet, because I might actually look at eBay right after this episode and buy this one, because it sounds like a freaking blast. But the game's name is Harley's Humongous Adventure. Harley's Humongous Adventure. This is the level 3 theme of this game. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, it kind of feels like they took a SimCity tune and then just made it super funky. I don't know about you guys, but send me a comment if you agree with me or if you don't agree with me. I would love to hear your thoughts on this one. So when it comes to the soundtrack for this game, it was composed by the American Brian L. Schmidt, and the game, it was developed by the American company Visual Concept Entertainment. And the game, it was released back in 1993 in the US, 1994 in Japan and Europe, and was exclusively released for the Super Nintendo. And yeah, when it comes to this game, they have the more Super Nintendo-esque kind of environmental art, so you don't see any clay going on there, but all the different characters within this game, so the playable, most likely named Harley, I guess, because it is his humongous adventure. But having the main character and monsters within this game, or enemies, so to speak, because it's not just monsters within this game, but all these are made by clay. So in this game, this is a platforming game. You have like a gun as well. You can go around and fire. You can get a jetpack and stuff like that. So you will get to use a different kind of items on your travels throughout this game. So the story in this game, from what I've heard or read about this game, you're a scientist making like new experiments, and apparently you make this large apparatus to shrink stuff, but something goes awry and the laser itself actually gets destroyed, and during this process, as it gets destroyed, it actually shrinks the main character of the game, Harley, by mistake. So you have to move around throughout these levels, find these items, and put the things back together and defeat the bosses, which are apparently rats, which is also stated by the story of this game. I don't know why. But yeah, you're moving around doing a lot of stuff, and only the characters and enemies are made of clay within this game, and it actually looks pretty good, but I never really heard anything about this game. I never knew a person that owned this game either, so I'm a little bit unsure how good this game actually is. But it's gonna be interesting actually just to play this game, but just listening to the music, I know I already like it. So, and I know I liked like Tom and Jerry, which not many people do like on the NES. So I guess I might enjoy this one, when not a lot of other people are enjoying this one. But looking at the composer here, so looking at Brian, he is actually a very fascinating man, as he started out early with composing music for arcade and pinball games. His first video game that he is uncredited in, though, were Narc, that was released in 1988 on arcade. And on his long list of games, I'm actually going to just pick a few of these, because I think it might be interesting to go back and dig a little bit deeper in Brian's kind of career. So I'm actually going to write this one down. But some of these games that he did work on was Jungle Strike from 1993, Zoop back in 1995, Blackthorn back in 1995 as well, The Amazing Spider-Man, Web of Fire back in 1996, and last credited work is Mutant Football League that was released back in 2017. And looking at Brian, he's still active as a composer, and just looking at his career, he has been credited in over 150 games, and that spreads out through pinball, arcade, and video games. So looking at his career of 33 years in game audio experience, he has also designed a couple of things on the side. So for example, he actually designed the BSMT 2000, which was an arcade game sound chip, and they also designed the sound chip Q-Sounds Q1 3D sound chip, which was also used for arcade machines. And during his career, he has been an inventor for about 20 patents within audio and game technology. So looking at the career of how many games he was worked on and what it is actually trying to kind of comprehend and kind of create for the future, it's actually astounding. I really love to see people like this. These are people that absolutely fascinate me to the fullest. I'm getting inspired just looking at what they're kind of doing. So it's definitely going to be super interesting digging deeper into the career of Brian here. But yeah, these were the 4 games that I wanted to talk about today, and also the 4 songs that we kind of picked for today. So that is the end of this week's episode of Finally Game Music. And yeah, I am your host, Kristoffer Schenström, and as per usual, if you would like to find other episodes of Finally Game Music, you'll find those on our homepage, Videospelsklubben.se, Spotify, or in your closest podcast app. Feel free to follow and comment on one of our social medias. You can do that by either going to Facebook or Instagram and just search for Finally Game Music. If you would like to hear your name within one of these episodes, then feel free to make a request for a song for an upcoming episode by commenting on any of the social pages or through Discord. And you can also support this podcast and future content and quality updates, but most importantly in the end, to support future composers, and you can do that by becoming a Patreon today. And our current awesome backers that we have on Patreon today is Mikael Sjöberg, Andreas Nilsson, and Daniel Onemark. Thank you so much for being a part of this podcast and supporting this, what I'm doing. And links where you can either buy or support the composers behind the music that we'll listen to today, you'll find that in our main post on Videospelsklubben.se. Next week, we're going to have a little bit of a special thematic, as we're going to have a Castlevania special. And the most important thing, I'm not going to be alone. I have a friend joining in. His name is Kristoffer Johansson. So it's going to be super interesting. We're not going to take any requests for the next episode. But if you're interested to kind of bring your information in front and forth for Castlevania, and me and Kristoffer is going to talk about it during the episodes, then feel free to just make a comment and I will pick it up for the episode. But we're going to pick the tracks for the next episode. Most likely is going to be our favorites or tunes that kind of sticks out in some way that it makes the soundtrack very interesting. But I think most of you guys know that, yeah, Castlevania music is amazing. Until then, do take care everybody and have a nice week. And see you all guys next time.